Hey, what's up, everybody? Mogollon Monster here. Welcome to Why the Fascination, or WTF, as I like to say. Today's guest is a return guest. You've heard him recently. He was on two shows ago. Mike Kirkpatrick had some really good stories to tell, and he's here today to tell us some more. And today's got a little bit of a twist. It's not a ghost story; it's a UFO story, and I'm looking forward to hearing this. So, Mike, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you a lot for having me back. That's what I want to say first and foremost is thank you for the invite.
My
And
pleasure.
again, it's my pleasure.
So, where did these sightings take place?
Every one of my sightings has been here in San Antonio. I
Oh,
live here, been here for 27 years, if the people don't know that. And people here call it Military USA because we, at one point, had 5 military bases here. And after I don't know, maybe about 15 years ago. So I believe they closed 2 of them. So now we're sitting here with 3 active bases, and yeah, you'll see the military people all around town in their uniforms, and so that's one of the reasons maybe that I've seen a lot of these. I've had 4 sightings,
wow.
and maybe that's why. Maybe the sightings I'm having aren't necessarily an extraterrestrial type of craft,
Oh,
but I've had 4 sightings with 3 witnesses in in each separate sighting, and 3 times my dog was with me out of the 4.
huh.
So yeah, so there's quite a bit of activity here, and again, I'm no scientist, and again, these things might not be from another world, but they were to me because I've never seen anything with these type of characteristics flying in the sky on a normal everyday basis.
Sure. Well,
So
it is
to me,
unidentified to you, so
yes, sir. To me, they are unidentified flying objects because to me they just seemed out of place and out of order. Um, but if I may begin, I can start with. I'd like to start with my first sighting and go through, each sighting one by one until we get to the third sighting, and I'd love to put it last because it has the most detail, and I believe it's going to probably take the longest. So I'd love to end with my third sighting last, and my fourth sighting third. So we'll be out of order for the listeners, but
hey,
everybody
they're
will.
your stories. Tell them how you want to.
Okay, well, I've just come to the conclusion that we are the people that are supposed to have this happen to us because we are the experiencers. I'm not a race car driver, and if I was, I'd probably be talking about my car.
Right?
And if I was a surgeon, I'd probably be talking about the human body. But I'm not. I'm talking about UFOs because I've had these things happen to me, and I just would love to share them with everybody that's willing to listen. And I want to again thank you for the platform, Mogion, because without you, I don't know where I'd go to get this off. But I guess I'll just start, man. My first sighting was here in San Antonio on the northwest side, out by Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. And I was with a friend of mine. And if the listeners don't know, he was a poker buddy of mine from the last set of stories I spoke of. But his name was Ron, and he was spending the night with me one night. And we opened the door to smoke a cigarette. We lit our cigarettes up, and from my door, you could see the fireworks from this Fiesta Texas show. They would put a show on every night at the end of the night, talking about the state of Texas and Sam Houston and all the basically the history of Texas. So I could sit there and listen to the show and see the fireworks every single night that the park was open.
Nice.
And Yeah, oh, it was beautiful. It was beautiful, man. It was nice out there, real quiet. You could see the stars at night. And, it didn't have the big city light glow that normally you do underneath all the artificial lighting. So here we are, just standing there, and we had just lit a cigarette, and right off to the like 180 degrees to our right, we just kind of looked over, and there's this big white round light, and we knew it wasn't the moon because the moon was on the opposite side of the sky. So we thought it was a helicopter coming in from a pretty good little ways away. We didn't hear any rotor noise or anything. And the light was just a constant size. If you held a 50-cent piece out at arm's length, this light that we were looking at was bigger than a 50-cent piece at arm's length. And I don't know if any of the viewers are familiar with the Allagash Ford incident that happened in Maine, but it was two brothers, Jim and Jack Weiner. You had Charlie, and then you had another guy named Chuck Racker, I believe. Or no, it was Charlie Foltz and some other guy named, last name of Rack. But they had mentioned, and I'd seen that when I was a young man, that they had seen this type of light that I'm looking at, and they called it roiling. That was the adjective they used, was roiling. And this is the same type of light Ron and I were looking at. It was bright, but it wasn't hard to look at. And it also had multiple color of light. So some of the white light was darker than the other white light, and it looked like it almost had some yellow brilliance in the light, almost kind of like if you look at a diamond and it reflects lights and you're getting all these little facets of sparkle and light. That's what this looked like.
And this light was moving?
It was stationary.
Stationary.
It was, the reason we thought it was coming toward us, because it was just in one position. It wasn't moving. We thought it might have been the headlight of a helicopter coming toward us. But now we notice, after looking at this thing, we're just staring at it. It's caught our attention. And it's, I don't know, maybe 40, 45 degrees in the air. And the background, it was right above the background of the trees. So we knew it wasn't anybody with a flashlight or a big searchlight, or
sure.
It wasn't a searchlight from a police helicopter or anything. And we're just staring and mesmerized. I mean, totally captivated by this light, and it's no noise or anything. And then at the same time, we can still hear the fireworks going off from the Texas show. And this light must have only been, in my guesstimation, would probably be about 75 yards away up in the sky.
That's not far.
No, it's not far at all. It wasn't far at all. And the next thing we notice is just that at the same time that, okay, all of a sudden the light is gone. And then we were looking at this light, it seemed like for about a minute. And it was like, okay, so we looked down and we looked at each other, and right then mentally we both knew that this thing didn't belong. And what were we just looking at? And we go to take a drag off a cigarette, and we're holding cigarette butts that are already burnt out.
Huh.
So if anybody's familiar with smoking, you can light a cigarette and that thing will sit there and burn for 5 minutes.
Sure.
So I believe we actually had a small amount of missing time, because as soon as we lit the cigarette, that's when we noticed the light. And as the light went away, that's when we noticed that all we were holding were, just the butts of a cigarette. And we had only taken one drag off of our cigarette.
Wow.
So that was the first sighting that I've ever had. It was just a crazy thing. Until this day, My friend Ron won't even speak about it.
Hmm.
I try to bring it up to him, and I try to say, remember that, and what was that, and he doesn't want anything to do with it.
So did the
Because it
light
was
when you were watching it, and did it just blink out, or did it fade away,
it
go away, or?
it was just gone. We never saw it blink out or move away or even like just turn off like a light bulb where the light just kind of implodes on itself. Nothing. We just noticed all of a sudden we're looking in this direction, and we both kind of mentally thought to each other and looked at each other, and it was gone.
Hmm.
And we never saw it disappear. And that's what was so weird about it is, here it is, and then there it's gone. And we look down to take another drag off our cigarette, and then there's no tobacco left. So that we were actually missing probably at least 3 or 4 minutes of time. And we just kind of looked at each other, and I said, "Did you see that?" And he's like, shook his head, "Yeah." And that was about it. I ran into the house. I said, "Honey, we just saw a UFO. This was my first sighting ever, in my life." And she says, "Well, what was it?" And I told her, and she says, "Oh my God, that's so cool." And that was about it for the first sighting. It was just that simple, and I couldn't understand what it might have been. I don't think it was anything military, and although it could have been.
Yeah, but that close. I mean, and there was no sound. That's
Yes,
unusual.
sir. Yes, it was very unusual. And the type of light it looked like, I had never seen anything still to this day that looked like that because of the type of light and the color. It was bright. It was way brighter than a moon, but it didn't hurt you to look at it like you look at the full moon. It doesn't hurt your eyes to look at the moon, and neither did this. Any type of artificial light, you try to stare at it, and it's going to hurt your eyes. You're not going to be able to look at it right like for as long as we feel we did.
Yeah.
It felt like we were looking at this for about a minute, but the minute that we were looking at this didn't explain the time of how fast the cigarettes burned down to nothing. So we felt like maybe, or I did anyway, maybe we had a quick little episode of missing time. So that was just a really weird experience, and we just carried on. But he'll never say nothing about it. He doesn't want to talk about it. And so I get to my second sighting, and this is I had moved into a different complex, and I had a little chihuahua, and he'd like to go walking 3 or 4 times a day. So I put him on the leash, and we're going out, and we're just, moving around in between the townhouses. And this is in the day. This is in the afternoon, about 4:30 in the afternoon. Bright, beautiful day.
Wow.
I'm looking out, and I see this glitter in the sky. Of course, I was always looking up. I was always looking up to see something. I always knew I was going to see another one, and this was it. This time it was a little pill-shaped object, oblong, maybe like the shape of a tic tac. And I've heard them being called tic tac objects before, but this was the shape of a tic tac. It was silver in color. I caught the glinting of the sun off of that's the reflection I caught. That's what caught my eye to it to begin with. And it was moving across the sky in front of me from left to right, but at an angle away from me a little bit. And I guess it made a sharp turn, like in a real sharp turn. And that's when the reflection of the sun hit it, and that's what caught my eyeball. And then it actually stopped there for a second, and it jiggled and moved right to left like 3 or 4 times, back and forth, just staying still, but jiggling. And then it shot off real smooth, but very fast at an unbelievable rate. and it just appeared. I watched it disappear into nothing, and I thought, there's no way that can be a plane. And maybe again it might be something military because of all the military bases we have here. I couldn't hear any sound from this one because it was quite a ways away, and I didn't see any heat distortion in the sky or anything.
Yeah.
But so I go back to the house to tell my wife again, and I forgot I was dragging a dog all the way home because I was such in a hurry that I wanted to tell my wife what was happening with all the detail that I saw this time, that I forgot I even had a dog with me. And I dragged that dog up 2 flights of stairs into my townhouse. My wife was taking a bath, and I walked into the bathroom and I said, "You're never going to believe what I just saw." And she said, "Another UFO." Like she knew what I had seen, I guess just from the tone of my voice or the look in my face.
Yeah.
And she said, "You're dragging the dog behind you. Take him off the leash." I had totally forgot that I even had the dog with me because I was in a shock. I was in a shock, and
I don't blame you.
Oh my God, I'm air moving left to right. It didn't move out of position very far. I mean, it would just move a little to the right and then all the way really quick back to the left and back to the right and back to the left. And it did this probably 3 or 4 times maybe. And then it just kind of settled down. And then it all of a sudden, real smooth, it just started moving away from me at a pace that I've never seen any plane move. And it just zipped out into nothing, into the blue sky, to where it got to where it was so small as a little dot. I concentrated on this object as far as I could see it, and it didn't take very long to get out of sight. And I'm thinking this thing is way too fast to be a jet. And if it was a jet, you would hear it.
Sure.
I hear jets all the time, and especially, being in a military place. I mean, I'm grown accustomed to seeing all types of airplanes here.
Sure.
So this didn't make any sense, and that's what I equate a number 2 UFO, because it truly was. It was something I'd never seen, and that's just kind of how it went, But it was another thing. I thought, oh my God, man, here I am, a magnet for this stuff.
Yeah, you do seem to attract the weird.
Yeah, I do, Mogollon.
That's cool, though. It's cool.
It's part of my life. I've accepted it now, and so we get down the road a good little while, maybe 5 or 6 years, and I had my 3rd sighting about 5 or 6 years later, but for the audience, I'd love to skip it and move on over to my last sighting.
Feel free.
My last sighting happened in 2011, in June, or May or June of 2011, and I was out front, just barbecuing. I do a lot of barbecuing. I love to cook. I love to eat. And It's one of the things we do here in Texas. If anybody doesn't understand that, well, you just have to be in Texas to really get it. But we barbecue a lot of our food, and I was out front with the grill, and my dog was running around in the yard right there, my same little Chihuahua. And I was actually head down, flipping my food over, when just something told me in my mind to look up. And when I looked up, wow, this is what was unbelievable. I saw a glowing triangular shaped formation of several objects. I mean, I want to say 9 or 11 objects. I counted them, but because it happened so quick, I don't think I was very accurate on the count. But these were a set of orange glowing rectangles. They were flying very low, and I want to say maybe 500 feet off the ground. Uh, totally less than 1,000 feet. They were totally silent, and as they slowly passed over us, they weren't going fast enough. It seemed to be able to, stay in the air.
Sure.
But it just slowly moving directly overhead. And as they passed above me and started getting away from me a little bit, that's when I noticed that although they kept a real hard static formation of a triangle, that actually every object was at a different altitude.
Wow.
So, yeah. So the back of these objects were like bright orange, and they had like a glow, a similar glow to the very first object I saw, but they were almost like a matte finish of a color. Like if you spray paint something in a matte finish, it's not shiny. It's just kind of there,
flat,
dull,
yeah.
A little flat, right? That's the type of look that these had, and I didn't notice any heat distortion either on this one, and no noise whatsoever.
What time of day was this?
This was in the evening. This was quite late. This was probably about 10 o'clock
Okay.
at night. There was a heavy cloud cover above us, and it was probably sitting maybe, I don't know, I would say, I'm no expert, but I would say maybe a mile up in the sky. We had total cloud cover of the sky. So, and this was below all that. And as it started moving away, I could start to see that the rear of every one of these 9 or 11, maybe there was 12, I don't know, but it seemed like it was an odd number because of the triangular formation they're in. And if you held out your hand and put out an arm's length, these rectangular shapes they were glowing, they looked like exhaust, like the back of an exhaust of a spaceship, man. They were about 2 inches long and about a half inch high, and they're all are the exact same shape. But you could see there from that point that they were all at different elevations, but still holding that grid, that solid V formation, and it just moved right over me. Well, I look up and then slowly they just go away, and they're moving way too slow.
And no noise, and that's crazy. My dad had something come over his house in Sedona twice in 1 week, and that was he didn't. I don't know that it was a V formation. I think it was more circular, but they could tell by the way it blocked out the stars how big it was. Yeah. And we've had the Phoenix lights here, back in the 90s, and
a very, very documented case, probably one of the most in history, other than Roswell. There was a lot of speculation about those Phoenix lights, but that's kind of how it was. And then I look up, and there's a neighbor coming out of his door just at that same time. Well, he got to see it too. And I yelled out to him, "Hey, man, did you see that?" And he says, "Yeah, he seen it." But just like me, he didn't know what they were. And it wasn't nothing that, I had ever seen or experienced before. And this thing looked like out of like a movie or out of like one of the old shows I used to watch, like Battlestar Galactica,
sure,
or something like that. It didn't fit, man. This stuff, if it was our military stuff, well, they're not telling us about stuff that's probably 50 years in advance of what we have now. Because if the listeners can understand, when did we start having jets? Like in the 40s? And this stuff just is so bizarre looking and without the sound, without any noise at all. I mean, you know, it just doesn't make sense. It's not something that everybody could probably understand if they even saw it. I think most people would start rubbing their eyes thinking they're seeing something, but these were truly flying, like I say, maybe about 500 feet above us, totally silent, and multiple craft.
And
And
how big were these things? I mean, I know you compared them, you know, with by from looking at the back, you said something about 2 inches and a half inch,
yeah,
but
that's all I saw about it, Mogion. The only thing I could see was the glow at first was what caught my eye. And I'm looking at like a bunch of glowing things coming over me, and I didn't see any outline of a ship. I didn't see a hard metallic sphere or, you know, rectangle or ship of any sort.
okay,
I was just seeing these glowing rectangles, and as they moved over us, that's when it looked from my angle. That's when it looked like they were like exhaust ports
gotcha.
out of each craft, and the exhaust ports on these craft were like 2 inches at arm's length by a half-inch tall, and just did not fit anything that's supposed to be going on in our neighborhood or above my house, you know.
Sure.
And this was after my third sighting. My third sighting was the most spectacular thing I've ever seen in my life.
I'm looking forward to hearing
And,
that.
well, I'm going to bring that up next because it really shook my world, and I just don't know. I'm just going to get into it because, like I say, every time I've had these sightings, I've had each of the three of the four I've had a witness with me, and three of the four I've had my dogs with me. But one night my buddy came over and he's walking three dogs. He had three dogs, a real handful, and I think they were Jack Russell Terriers if I can remember. But he was a good friend of mine, and his name was Mark, and he came over to my house one night, and it was such a beautiful, clear, beautiful night, and he says, "Hey, you want to walk the dog?" So this was the first time he ever actually came over to ask me if I wanted to walk my dog with his. But I said, yeah. And we walked around the whole outside perimeter of this apartment building. And when we got back around to where he lived, we were going to drop his dogs off. And then we were going to go drop my dog off. And then we were going to go down to the store before it closed. This was like 11 o'clock at night or so. So we made our way around the complex and got to where he lived, and I stayed out on the sidewalk, and he took his dogs in. He said he was going to go tell his wife what was going on, how we were going to go to my house and then to the store, and then we'd be back to his house. And as I'm waiting there on the sidewalk out front of his place, I'm only like 20 feet, 25 feet from his door. It was such a clear night, I looked up for the Big Dipper. Because we used to have our boat on Lake Mead, and my stepfather showed me how to read the stars and how I could always find the Big Dipper if the stars were visible. So that's why I started looking up, and I was looking directly up because that's where the Big Dipper was in the sky at the moment. And then over the edge of the top of the apartment building, way up in the sky, I started seeing one light, 2 lights, 3 lights, 5 lights, like that, in order. As they broke the edge of the roof, you could see 1, and then you could see 3 in a triangular formation again. But these lights were so small, I mean, they might be maybe 2 millimeters, maybe a millimeter tall. So far up in the sky, I thought they were birds at first. I thought they were geese.
Huh.
And because of the formation, and I thought, wait a minute. And then I thought about what is this? What is this? So I go to call my buddy because I don't want him to miss it. And in the time it took me to look over at his door and to think about his name, everything shut off in my mind. I was going through a Rolodex of names: Bill, Bob, Paul, Steve, Jody, Eric, Mark. And I yelled his name as loud as I could. And I look away from his door, and now I look back up, and now this object is sitting probably 1,000 feet above me, where it was probably 2 miles in the sky. Because of the size of the lights now are huge.
Really?
And they are circular lights, soft, real glowing, like between a pale yellow and a pale orange. Something right in between that light spectrum, that light color of orange and yellow. And now these lights are circular, and there's 7 of these circular lights in a V formation. And I'm looking at this black ship that's holding these lights. And this black ship was triangular. It was huge. I've heard the term before on another sighting. Another witness said that his sighting he saw of this triangle was as big as a Walmart. And I have to agree with them. This thing was flying, floating, no noise, in the air right above me. And it was the size of a Walmart shopping store.
Wow.
It was unbelievable, man. I could not believe what I'm looking at. Well, out of the corner of my eye, here comes Mark running out the door. This is all in about a second's time, or maybe 2 seconds' time. He's thinking that I'm getting in a fight with somebody because of the way I yelled his name, that he thought I needed help. And when he came out, he's 6'3", and he came out with these long legs. I could just see him running out. And he stopped right with me. He's like, "What's going on?" I said, "Look." And I pointed up to the sky. At the same time, out in the distance, probably, I don't know, in my estimation, maybe a couple miles away, there was a Cessna airplane, a small single-engine Cessna, like a little Piper Cub airplane, and we could hear it buzzing, in the distance. This night was so clear and crystal clear, not a cloud in the sky. It was beautiful, probably 65 degrees. I mean, one of the reasons I love Texas so much was because of these types of nights.
Sure.
And as this little Cessna plane crossed in front of where this object was sitting above us, the sound of the plane stopped. The buzzing of the engine, we couldn't hear it as it passed in front of this huge triangle. And then when it came out the other side of the triangle, the sound of the engine started again. So I couldn't believe it. I mean, I'm sitting here, and it took about 10 or, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 seconds for the time for the airplane to pass in front of this huge triangle. And the whole time it was in front of the triangle, we couldn't hear the engine of the plane anymore. And as soon as it got past and we could see the lights of the plane again, that's when we started hearing the sound of the engines again. So Mark thought I was talking about the Cessna airplane. And I'm like, "No, man, look right up above us." And this dark object, it was totally black. It was a satin finished hard steel or titanium or carbon fiber. I don't know. You could see there was texture to the bottom of the craft. There was little cubby holes and nooks and crannies. It wasn't perfectly smooth, like, say, maybe the bottom of the air shuttle or anything, or our space shuttle. It wasn't like, I mean, it was really bizarre looking. There was little things on the bottom of this thing, but nothing really was standing out too much. You could see some good detail, but this thing was blocking out all the stars above it. And it was so low that I swear I could hit it with a good high-powered BB gun. It was so low.
That's pretty low.
It was unbelievable, Mogollon. It was so unbelievable. Well, once it caught Mark's attention, I'm standing there right next to it, and I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, man, oh my God, I told you so. I told you so. I told you, man.
So you had told him previously about your other encounters?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir, I had. And now he's actually there with me, being able to see this thing. And this is the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen in my life. There is no way that this thing is ours. And the feeling I got right away was, what are you going to do about it? You know, that's the feeling that I got that was coming from this ship. There was nothing we were going to do about it.
Nah.
There was nothing that nobody was going to do about it. Not the police, not the fire department, not the military, not the secret military. There wasn't no Marines going to do anything about this thing sitting there. It was doing whatever it wanted to do. You know, and that was the scariest thing about it, was how brazen that this thing is sitting right above me. Why me? I don't know. But there it is, man. I can sit there and point at it. You know, it's right here. Well, I knew at that moment that maybe I'm not supposed to be looking at this thing. It was just that anonymous feeling, man, like I'm not supposed to be here type of thing. I'm not supposed to be watching this. And it was almost like a sense of paralysis, because this whole time, I mean, this whole sighting went on for about 2 minutes in my estimation. And after just going over and over saying, oh, I must have said, oh my God, 100 times if I said it once.
Wow.
And I told you so, I told you so, because I'm trying to make him understand that, look, man, this is what I was talking about all these years. All this time I've been telling y'all, and I don't know if y'all have believed me or not, but now I have a unbelievable witness, and we're witnessing things that is just unearthly. And if, like I said, if it is ours, it could be. I've heard of the TR3B, but this thing was as big as a Walmart store, man. It was. I don't see how anything this big could have been floating right above us, no noise. And in fact, it wasn't just not making no noise. It felt like it was absorbing sound. Because when the airplane crossed in front of it, we couldn't hear the airplane anymore. And when I yelled for Mark, I yelled at the top of my lungs because I wanted him to see this with me. I didn't know it was going to drop so low. But in that 1 second it took me to call Mark's name, it didn't fall. It shot down. It drove down to where it was, because even a rock couldn't have fallen that fast from that height.
Yeah.
You know, and they say gravity, everything falls at a certain rate, at the same rate.
Unless it's propelled.
Yeah, 1,000 pounds of feathers or 1,000 pounds of bricks. They're both falling at the same time. So, yeah, this thing was absorbing sound. Not even one neighbor cracked open their door. Not one car came by during this time. Nobody, opened the door to say, hey, is everything okay? What's going on out here?
So what was Mark's reaction to this?
He was totally silent. He was standing beside me looking at this, totally silent, man. He didn't say a word. He didn't say, oh my God, what is that? I was doing all the talking. I told you, man, I told you, finally, man, oh my God, here it is, right above us. And it just shocked me, because I think whatever was in this craft knew that no neighbors were going to come out or no cars were going to come into the little driveway we were there. But this thing was absorbing sound like if you had ever been in a recording studio, that there's no echoes at all.
Sure.
You know, and that's what it was. That's what it was like. That's what I could remember hearing myself when I was just exclaiming, you know, oh my God, I told you so. I even heard in my own voice that there was no echo. So it was really strange hearing my own voice with no echo, but I was saying it so loud because I was so excited and freaked out about it that I know that people have had to hear me, you know, for a good little ways away, but nobody came out their house to see anything. So after, like I say, probably about a minute and a half of looking at this thing, it started to slowly drift away. It started to move. And that's when, on the edges of this huge triangular craft, the city lights started reflecting off the edges of it, because we were only looking at the direct bottom of it.
Yeah.
Because it was so close to us and just so directly above us, we couldn't see the sides of this thing. But as it started moving away very, very, very slow, I mean, if you could calculate 1 mile an hour, I don't know if that would be too fast. It just barely started moving away. And as it did, that's when we could start to see the city lights reflecting off the edges. And that's when we could tell how thick, how tall this thing was. And in my estimation, I've been in construction all my life. I know distances, I know stories, I know story buildings and how tall a building is. And I say this thing, depending on how low it was in the sky, because again, I'm no expert and I'm no expert witness, but this thing had to be 5 to 10 stories thick as far as the height of it from the bottom.
So 50 to 100 feet.
50 to 100 feet is my estimation. And I'm leaning toward more like the 100 feet. This thing was big. This thing was really, really big. And I'm like, how is this thing staying up? It's not even moving and it's not even making any noise. And as it started moving away, like I say, we could start to see it change. It was almost to where it was cloaking in and out of cloakingness. And around the whole perimeter of the triangle started to get clear. Not totally clear, but a little like opaque. And you could start to see through the edges, all the way around the edges, maybe a third of the size of the ship. This is starting to become invisible. And I'm looking up through, and it almost looked like glass around the edges. And then I'm looking at I-beams in there, Mogollon. I'm looking at I-beams up there, and if there was I-beams in this thing, they had to have been 15 feet wide, where the flange of the I-beam, that's the cross member that goes, you know, that's like when you cross your eyes.
Sure, I know, yeah.
It's like a capital letter I. The very top part and the very bottom part, that width, if I knew measurement at all of anything, those widths had to have been 15 feet wide compared to what everything else I'm trying to figure out and distance and length and size. And it was just so huge. So it starts moving away so slow. And that's when my buddy had a phone in his pocket. My buddy Mark had a phone in his pocket this whole time. And he had a flashlight, an LED flashlight on his key ring that was hooked right there in his belt loop. So he pulled out, the first thing he did was pulled out his keys, and he turned his flashlight on and started SOSing this craft. But I told him, I said, man, it's too far away now. It's starting to go. This thing's starting to leave, man. I said, they're not going to see that little light, man. And so as it started just drifting away, we were kind of silent and just watching it. We didn't really say too much. We were just in awe, and I mean flabbergasted of this thing. And I had heard about the Phoenix Lights before that, but none of that came to my mind because this was my Phoenix Lights.
Sure.
You know, this was my oh my God moment. You know, the Phoenix Lights came into mind later on, but as it started drifting, it started moving just a little bit faster the further it got away. So it just started picking up a pace to where we were just going, oh my God, it's going to go over those trees and we're not going to be able to see it anymore. And at first we thought about getting in his car, but his car would barely start sometimes. And I thought, no, we're not going to try to chase this. It's going to be dangerous. And it started slowly moving away. And once it got to these trees out in the distance, it started just getting swallowed up by the trees. And I thought, oh man, you know, what in the hell we just see? So he ran into the house and he started to tell his girlfriend, Mary, he's like, Mary, we just saw a UFO. We just saw a huge triangular, man. And she was trying to sleep because she worked a different shift. And she was trying to get some sleep. And she was actually saying, you know, leave me alone and leave me alone. And I just couldn't believe her reaction. Here we're trying to explain to her the most significant thing that's ever happened to the both of us in our lives, you know, and in our combined of 60 years on this earth. And she's wanting to go back to sleep and telling us to leave her alone. I just couldn't believe it, you know. I thought, oh my God, this chick, I wish this chick would wake up, you know. So this thing, you know, like I said, was just sitting right up above us, and it was just crazy.
So there were no reports from anybody else after that?
Well, I don't know, because what we did was I ran back to the house after it was gone and out of sight. I said, I have to go home. And I had my dog just sitting there, you know, and so he says, well, let me go in and tell her I'm going with you. And so he did, and we went to my place. We dropped my dog off, and I said, you know, Sharon, guess what I just saw? What, another UFO? I said, yeah, I saw another UFO, and this time there ain't no doubt about it. And Mark's just shaking his head, yes, you know, we just saw it. We just saw the most incredible thing that we're ever going to see in our life. So we went down to the store. The whole time we went down to the store, in our little walk that took us there, it was probably a block and a half or so away. I had a real good friend that ran the night shift there, and I wanted to go tell her, but we wanted to go to the store for beer and cigarettes and stuff. We were totally stone cold sober, you know, ain't had a drink or a beer in that whole day. And so we got to the store. There were a few customers in there, and we were on camera. We didn't realize at the moment, but we were on camera saying, you know, hey, we just saw this huge triangle, man, and oh my God, did y'all see this? You know, did anybody else see it? And it was a kind of a gathering place, this little store, you know, all the local friends and stuff would hang up out there, but nobody had seen it. So I told Mark on the way home, walking back home, that we were going to have to report this. And I told him, I said, I've heard of the National UFO Reporting Center with Peter Davenport, man. He's on Coast to Coast all the time. I said, and I used to listen to Coast to Coast. I was a regular listener for a good 5 years. I don't think I missed one show with George Norrie. So I said, that's who we're going to call. So as soon as we got back into his place, he had an old computer, and we looked it up. We looked up the phone number, and we made a call, but we only had an answering machine. So we left a message, and actually about 20 minutes later, Peter Davenport himself had called my buddy Mark back.
Wow.
And Mark's trying to explain to him, hey, man, I've worked on, you know, jet skis, motorcycles. I worked on cars. I'm working on mine right now. He says, man, I've been in all kind of industry. He says, I ain't ever seen nothing like this. So what we had already started at that time, between the phone call And by the time between our phone call that we called Peter and by the time he had reached us back, we had already started on a report on Mark's computer. And we had gotten about a paragraph because we didn't know what to say first. We didn't know how to start a story. We didn't know how to explain this thing. So we had only gotten maybe a paragraph of this story out when he had called back and said, hey, I want each of you to write your own story. So the first story that we started together, the first paragraph is actually both of our input. And then he followed up with maybe 5 or 6 more paragraphs. And after he got done, that's when I put my own story on the interwebs, on his website. But I want all the listeners to know that you can't trust what's going on out there, because when I looked up just recently, a few days ago, I looked up our sighting, and our sighting has been abbreviated and or modified by someone. It's not exactly how we wrote it out, and I remember the wording like verbatim, and none of that was on the report. So I know it was shortened and clipped and modified, abbreviated, or whatever. But for any listeners want to know, it was in San Antonio, Texas, and when we witnessed it, it was 4/9 of the year 10. So 4/9 of 2010. It was at 11:15 at night, and we reported it on 4/10 of the same year of 10, of course, and it was just because we reported it because it was after midnight. So that's when the date changed, and then finally the reporting center posted it on 4/13. So you're probably going to find it if anybody wants to look it up, although it's not the exact sighting that I'm just telling now. You can look up just by the date, by the April 13th, 2010, which ironically, Mogian, it was 10 years ago this week.
Yeah, it was.
And that's why I wanted to bring it out so soon to you, because it's a celebration for me. And like I said, this was the most unbelievable moment in my life. And I don't have any children, but even if I did have a child, I don't think it would compare to what I saw this night. And that's my honest opinion about it, you know. But it was just another unbelievable event in my life, man. And again, like I said, then I had the fourth sighting with the other glowing objects that were above me when I was barbecuing. So, like I said, for the viewers, the stories are a little out of order. 3 and 4 are switched.
Oh, that's all right.
I haven't had another sighting since 2011 or 2011 and a half. In I think this was May or June. I can't remember the exact date. I quit counting after seeing them 4 times.
Right.
You know, it's just, but I'm always has my eyes open to that sky, you know, and I say sometimes, people that want to look at their phone and they're always have their head down, maybe people need to start looking back up.
I just said the same thing recently to Jake and Adam over on BLB. Too many people are looking down. Everybody's got their head. They're gonna, we're gonna, in 1,000 years, they're gonna look back and go, oh, this is when everything went to shit because everybody developed tech neck, and everybody's got their kink neck and.
And here we go walking like an ape again. We're walking over and everything's going to go back downhill. Yeah, it's just, it's something that I have. Like I said before in my other show when I was with you, I don't know if I'm cursed or blessed, man, but I loved seeing it. It was scary. To be honest, I didn't sleep. Okay, so this happened at 11:15 that night. I had been up all that day. The whole next day, I stayed up, and I finally went to bed the next morning about 6 o'clock. I had been up for so many hours that I couldn't keep my eyes open anymore. But I couldn't stop thinking about this thing. It
Sure.
was just incredible. I heard that we have a secret space program, and actually Donald Trump just acknowledged it a couple months ago, I believe.
Yeah, it's not so
And
secret anymore.
yeah, exactly. But what I mean by that is, if if I don't know what I want to say. It's just so amazing reminiscing about this. It's like I want to say more, and I want to say more, but um, we are so far behind. If all these craft were ours, or we know about them or whatever, that we are so behind that the common everyday person, the common man and the common lady, we don't have any idea what we have. And that's a shame. This is our government. It's supposed to be for the people, but it's not. We're lied to all the time, and it's time for me to let it out. At least me, my little old self. At least people can understand what I had to see and witness and what I know. And that's another thing too, is I don't look at the world the same as I did, of course, because now I know something that most people don't. And it's kind of hard carrying that around every day, because I look at people and they're getting all upset over something really trivial, and I'm thinking, man, there's huge flying triangles right above our heads, and you're worried about your gallon of milk dripping from the store or something, whatever it may be.
Trivial. Yeah.
People, just trivial stuff, and I'm thinking that's what I always come back to is, okay, well, I saw a huge triangle as big as a Walmart flying above my head. So again, I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse, but I take the blessed, bro.
Absolutely. I don't think, I understand what you're saying as far as looking at people and like you guys have no idea,
Right,
what's going on. And
right.
that's like with my experiences that I've had, paranormal and stuff. I know it happened, and that's all that matters to me. And I can share that with other people who are knowers. Um, I don't care what anybody thinks. Somebody else doesn't want to believe it. Don't believe it. That's up to you.
Neither neither do I. I don't care what if they believe me or what they think about it or their opinion, because I know it happened to me, and that's all there is to it.
That's
That's
it.
all I need. you know. So, but I just love sharing with the guests, and I appreciate the support from everybody that's listening right now. Everybody, I can't name all the names because that wouldn't be fair if I missed a few. But I am so thankful that everybody has been giving me the support,
Oh yeah,
because
we have a great bunch of
it's
people out there that that do show the support, and and they're respectful, and I haven't seen anybody or experienced any like negativity yet, and I'm sure there's a troll or two out there just waiting to pounce, but whatever. I'm not sweating
yeah.
that.
There's always someone that just doesn't get it, But that's okay. That's okay. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion, and I welcome that, because I was maybe that's why I saw it, because I had an open mind, or because I was looking up after my first sighting, and I was looking up. I was making myself available to see one. If I had my face in my phone all day,
You wouldn't have
I
seen a
would
thing.
I would have never given myself the opportunity to witness. And I've had four, but I haven't had a sighting since that last sighting in 2011. But my eyes are still on the skies, man. And I'm hoping to see the next one.
Well, keep looking up, man.
I will.
Well, Mike, I want to thank you so much for sharing your experiences, and I'm glad that I could provide a platform for you to tell your stories. I look forward, if you have any other stories in the future, I look forward to hearing them. I mean, you've been such an awesome guest, and I know that my listeners really appreciate your stories. Just from the responses and the comments, and the amount of views on your stories. It's been really awesome. So I
Well, I love
definitely
sharing.
no, I love hearing it. I love stories,
All
dude.
right.
And this is the way I like to do it. Is I don't want to narrate. You know, I will if I have to, but I'd rather hear first person stories. You know, because that's where you get the feeling and the emotion and how things happen is, you know, first person stories. And I just, you know,
Yeah.
I hope that more people will, you know, email me and send in their stories, and they'll realize that they're not going to get ridiculed. They're not going to get, you know, judged. And they have a place where they can tell their story, you know. So I really do appreciate you coming on again and
Well,
sharing with us.
thank you for having me again,
Oh, my
Mogian.
pleasure. Absolutely,
And
my pleasure.
hopefully I'll be able to return with a few more of my experiences if I'm lucky, God willing.
Well, you're more than welcome to come back anytime.
Well, thank you in advance, and I'd like to say thank you for all the listeners again. And it's been my pleasure, brother.
All right, Mike. Well, on that note, I will say adieu. I'll be in touch soon, just to BS. You know, we'll stay in touch.
All right.
All right, buddy.
All right.
I will talk to you soon, man. Thank you so much again. Really.
Okay. Okay. Everybody take care.
All
And
right.
be safe.
Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right, bye. Wow, those are some really amazing stories. Mike, thank you so much for sharing those. That was awesome. If you guys out there appreciated these stories and really liked them, you know, share your love and hit the like and subscribe and share, you know. If you guys have stories that you want to tell, please, you know, get in touch with me. You can email your stories at monstermogollon, monstermogollon @gmail.com. You can also hit me up on Facebook. I have my page is Mogollon Monsters with an S. Friend request me, or you know, do what you guys do. But be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and share. That would be awesome. I guess that's about it. So we will be. I'll bring you some more stories as soon as I get them. You'll get them. And I want to say thank you for watching. And everybody, you know, take care and peace and God bless. Bye.